work with us. Hopefully you guys are in agreement with that. One of the things that we said is, we come in these meetings once a month. You guys have your individual subcommittee meetings, lots of activities and lots of conversations happen outside of it. And I don't know that we've ever sat down to really kind of just talk through and share with each other and get to know each other on maybe a little deeper level about how we want to strategize to move this work forward. So we would like to propose that we have a retreat at some point this summer, and find some time to all come together to do that. Any concerns or questions about that? Is everybody in support of a strategic planning retreat of sorts?
Right. Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, and we'll move out on that. And again, just looking for probably I'm gonna say like a 10 to 2, have a little lunch, and find a date that'll work for everybody to really help us get on track with what we need to do over the next 12 months. I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay.
I was going to go back to regards to your previous question about the budget, and things that we would prioritize. I want to second Mr. Bowles, Commissioner Bowles, around community engagement. I think that's a bucket we already have here, a line we already have here, in creating the listening sessions. I know education is looking at getting a listening session. I know you all are thinking of having a listening session. I would love to make those listening sessions fed opportunities for families. We may potentially think about a venue that supports a Black-owned business where we are able to make a donation to the organization, to the institution for hosting us. But putting a couple of dollars towards the listening sessions to be able to make them even better than they were last year.
Yeah. I would strongly, I know that we've had listening sessions, but I just feel like it was so long ago, and I feel like we've learned a lot since those sessions. And we fully funded the budget to have a listening session for every harm area. So for those subcommittees that have already hosted a listening session to do those, I think we should have another one. I think we've learned something, and we'll go into those with more meaningful exchanges with the community.
I think the other one on here may be, I know that the researcher may be something that takes a little bit longer to find and identify through the RFI, but I know we had talked about a oral historian, like a local activist. It may be a shorter process to identify that person, to start working with that person. Again, I think in our original vision, we would use that local expert to then point the researcher in a place to do a deeper, more analytical dive. And we could preliminarily start, maybe, I don't know if it's going to take another RFI process. I think we would do something a little more informal with the community expert, but figuring out the way to vet, find that person, figure out what it would cost to compensate them for their work as well. I see that oral historian here. There's a line item there for that as well, under personnel. So those would be the two, I guess, community engagement and oral historian would be the two that I would put as high priority to get started with as soon as possible.
And I did reach out, I asked LaDonna the other day to help us understand what has to go through this RFI process, because I think it's a dollar amount. And if it's under a certain dollar amount, you don't have to go through that same process. But if it's over a certain dollar amount, then you have to have X number of.
For the contract dollar amount.
Right. Yeah, it's either 150K or 250K. But it's either 150 or 250.
So yeah, we'll find that out.
So I was just going to comment. I agree. I think the oral historians is really important, and I think that's something that we should consider trying to bring in sooner rather than later, especially as we proceed with our listening sessions. So one of my thoughts about the listening sessions is that they're extremely important to engage the community, but we also need to make sure that we're capturing the community voice, that we're actually recording that voice so it can feed into our report. And so I think bringing on a historian or some position that can record those meetings and develop kind of a narrative of what comes out of those meetings, I think is extremely important. I think the other aspect is, you know, there's a lot of moving parts to this that I think need to come together. One is the listening sessions, but I think the getting the RFI out to the correct or to the ideal candidates is going to be a lot of work in itself. So, you know, does there need to be a consultant or a position that can help us identify where that RFI needs to go? Not just sending it to someone's email, but actually reaching out to the people that we think are the experts that can help us do this work. I think that's going to be a really, really heavy lift, and maybe it's not something that us as individual commissioners can do without some substantial support.
Very good.
Just to add
Yes.
on to that, sister, it's just opportune to mention that we had received a notice from African American Redress Network, and they are, and of course, with Heather now in the picture, she may be the main point of contact for all it. But it was mentioned that they would publicize the event engagements that we have. Of course, you know, the African American Redress Network is a national network of people working on reparations in all different types of cities, and they're actually a legal team. But they said they would, whatever publications that we do have that we would like to put forth, they would assist with disseminating that information to their contacts so that we can, you know, also have another lens of resources to gather from. So that's also on the table.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowles. Commissioner Jones, I do want to tell you, I don't think Mickey Dean is on the call today, but he did say he would be reaching out because he has a network of those experts in that space to try to figure out how to help support us identify that investigator, if there's any guidance there that they can give. Okay, so what I jotted down was we need to prioritize lining up our community consultants. I think that's what we called them, community consultants. Those were our laypersons who just have an unusual or in-depth understanding of our community or different harms within our community. And then making sure as we plan out our listening sessions, which I would love if it's possible for us to plan them out so that we have a schedule of them even for the year, so that they are kind of, folks can expect them. They know that they're going to happen. We have plenty of time to promote them and get people to support them. But to your point, when we have those listening sessions, making sure we're doing the right things to capture what's coming out of those listening sessions. And then the last thing that I want to say on the budget, when it talked about paying for training, if you recall, that was training that was coming from the African American Redress Network to teach local people how to do oral histories. And so it's not just sitting there listening to somebody droll on and on and on about the 40s, but how do you ask the right questions? How do we get what we need? And how do you capture that information? So there's a whole skill to that. And so that was to bring somebody to Kansas City to train whoever we liked to be those folks to go out in community and take oral histories.
Is there any training? I was thinking that was possibly that, and the training development, that'd also be for us in terms of thinking about how we're crafting our final product, to be able to do some research and to do some continued learning around other cities' projects and final products. Maybe attending a couple conferences here and there to be able to see the full breadth of the work for our commissioners. Yeah.
Yeah. And that really leans into this other piece. I'm kind of jumping around, but the other thing that I put out there was just events and activities for us. I don't know about you, but I tell people all the time, I appreciated having the full year before we got funding, because I just feel like I learned so much more about the work and what people were doing out in other communities and in other areas.
Right.
And I'm not sure how confident I would have been. I would have supported. I'm not sure how confident I would have been on an approach had we had the money in May and had we hired somebody right out of the gate. So for me personally, I see it as some sort of almost as a benefit. There are lots of conferences and education sessions and all kinds of things happening across the country. And I think that it would be helpful for our commission to be as engaged as possible and bring that information back for all of us. All right,
One more thing.
oh, sure.
So I was just looking at the budget again. So there's one more, I think, personnel that I think we should consider sooner rather than later is the legal consultant. Because just given kind of what's happened across the country with some of the other commission work on reparations, I think it would be ideal for that legal consultant to work in parallel with the investigator as they're building to the report to advise on, what type of content or how things need to be written to address some of the legal barriers that are coming up.
I will say, and I'm trying to remember if this was said here in the commission. I guess when I say it, you'll know if it was shared amongst all of us. But there was a question about the legal consultant in our budget and whether or not we could use city staff to support any legal needs that we have. And I think that the work is unique enough to where although we may be able to use a legal person, they would still probably need to work in conjunction with somebody who has a level of expertise in this work. So that may look a little different than just having a straight out legal consultant. I will take that as a follow-up to see who that person might be within the city and what that might look like. Because we do have direct contact with one of the legal consultants from Evanston. And we did discuss funds and fees and all that last year. So what would that look like? And does that sound like a appropriate approach? Or will that just make it hard?
Oh.
If somebody that doesn't have that background, that doesn't have that experience, it may make it more difficult.
Let me say that there may be some conflict of interest concerns with using city legal consulting. Now, the city is going to have to be involved in this. So if we have an outside consultant, they have to have a relationship with the city and with legal persons in the city, because they will be responsible for researching ordinances and other kind of legal items. But solely relying on city legal consulting would be, I think, a conflict of interest, not something we want to do. And also keep in mind that we have an RFI for researchers. We don't have an RFI for legal consulting. There's nothing in the RFI that addresses the type of skill or talent that we would need for legal consultants. So we should, I suppose, since the amount is probably under a contracted amount, we may not need to do that as formally, but we should set some criteria for what we want for legal consulting.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I brought it up now. If it is something that needs an RFI, that process may take a little bit. So thinking about that now and not waiting until we desperately need someone, I think would be good.
Having someone and not needing them rather than needing them and not having them.
It may be possible for us to do this in a staged way. Since we have some budget, we can possibly reach out to persons who have experience with other commissions and legal issues and just get some initial advice that we can pay for. And then from that, we can begin to develop a more formal, a more extensive process for legal consulting.
Good.
I just want to add on to that, brother. Commissioner Tawhid, I completely agree with that. I think a phased approach is best because we can't rely on the city just for, for the proper guidance, right? To be real. And so, however, we do know that for every ordinance that goes through, I don't know what the board's called, but they send it to their lawyers whatever that lawyer board is, to review and to change language and such. And so then they send it back. So I definitely think that phased approach, like you're saying, initially get some guidance from someone who's already been into it. And then as we're formulating our proposals or the process, consulting with this lawyer jurisdiction that does the ordinances and such, if that's what they do. I think that we would be able to utilize them, but that's something we have to check up on, right? But then after that, coming back with our final and having our personal legal counsel go through that and such. But I was just in approval of the phased approach on there. So
Thank you. Any other discussion about those topics?
There are comments in the Zoom chat.
Oh. Eric, can you help us with those? I can't see the chat.
Can you see it?
Mhm.
I think that Eric Stafford would be a great local historian. Can you provide contact information for
Oh, that was
consideration?
Will asking for Eric's contact information.
Oh,
Great thought.
Mr. Ellis, can you read that out loud? I can't see it.
Janae Relaford asked, has the commission made contact with any of our local HBCUs, Lincoln University, Harris Stowe, and regarding research assistance or any other university assistance? I said, that's a great thought. I think that's
Yeah, we have not, but that is on Eric's to-do list. He is identifying, I am saying that correctly.
Huh?
I did say that correctly. That's,
did.
that's on your to-do list. You're
Yes.
working through, yes, yes. But I don't know if on this list, if you have all of these folks. So yes,
I did Google the other day,
okay.
some, and I don't remember.
Those are our two closest HBCUs, I think. And then there's a couple in Oklahoma, Langston's in Oklahoma, which is only 3 hours away. I think another interesting university that may be able to help us out would be Haskell University in Kansas. It's one of the first Indian
Native American.
indigenous
Mhm.
universities. And they have some specific experience with reparations. So they may, I think that when it's also when we think about legal representation too, I think other cities that may have already gone through this and other groups of people that may have already fought for reparations and having lawyers that are familiar with other works, with other groups of people that have sought reparations.
I don't want to get us way off track, but does anyone happen to know what the legal contention was for Evanston, what they're bringing forward as a legal concern for Evanston? Does anybody on the call know what that is?
I can,
go ahead.
well, is that Will? I said I could talk about that. We had a discussion of that at a retreat. Will was there as well, so if he wants to jump in, he can do that. Well, the legal issue is a very simple one. It is that the reparations eligibility for reparations payments are race-based.
Oh,
And that's the only criteria. That's the only let's say a claim for the suit. There were a couple of the suit was bought by a conservative organization. They found a couple of Evanston residents who would have standing in the city of Evanston to bring the suit. These were white Evanston residents who are arguing that the eligibility for the reparations payments are race-based and therefore unconstitutional.
got it. All right. Very good. Any other conversation about prioritizing the budget? That was good conversation. I agree with everything that we've talked about.
And I just wanted to add that I was going to say that, it's wise to jump out front with the legal end of it, but I don't want it to slow down our process, that we get hung up waiting on it and trying to figure it out, because the adversaries are going to be there. They're going to come up with some kind of any little thing to stop us to distract us. And so I just want to make sure that we stay focused on the work that we need to do, and let the legal part kind of take care of itself. But being wise in getting it in place is great.
Let me say this going forward. One of the things, the persons who were in the retreat that I'll talk about from Evanston made it very clear that they were not to talk about any of the specific legal issues with regard to the Evanston suit. That raises an issue for us that if we are discussing any legal issues, we should be able to do that in a closed session. That is, we should not have to discuss any legal strategies or any issues as we're going forward that might affect Kansas City going forward in an open session. Well, we should check with legal to make sure that that's the case, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Commissioner Tauheed, you will be so proud of me. So effective immediately, you will notice going forward at the bottom of all of our agendas that we make public, we're going to put that we will go into closed session. And
Okay, great.
that is just there in case we need to. It doesn't mean that we will, but as we begin to do this work, as we begin to have those conversations, you're absolutely right. There will be times that we'll need to go into closed session to have conversation. So you'll begin to see that.
I am proud of you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else there? Are we ready to move on to commissioner replacements? I just want to say, we're not going to talk about that here, but great. I've seen some emails coming through. Mickey Dean has provided us with the app. I think it was a Google Doc application process that they used that asked specific questions to help us kind of go through the list of folks who are interested in being part of the commission. And then we want to make those recommendations to the mayor as soon as possible. And I did ask Mr. Reed Day to make sure the mayor prioritizes getting all 3 of our spots filled as soon as possible. Because, you know, Ryan has been gone since January and we're in June and now we've lost 2 more. So we really want to get people on board and ideally before we have our retreat. So we're talking 30 to 45 days.
Can I ask that we add maybe something to the application process for as persons with their specific interests or expertise in the harm areas, since we have lost persons from specific harm areas
Yes.
or subcommittees?
A third ask, because I agree with that too, Dr. Tauheed. Third ask, I would say, is that if we could reach out to these commissioners and that have resigned and just say, hey, I mean, because we know they've been involved in the subcommittee work thus far. They've been involved in the reparations cause thus far. So maybe they have an inkling, maybe they know this person that has extra, capacity or ambition to push these. And so then we ask them, hey, do you have someone that you would recommend to fulfill that place? But we still go forth with the application process, all that, and the addition that Dr. Tauheed just said.
Got it. And I think we all know this, but just to be clear, the decision is solely the mayor's. We can make recommendations, but it is solely the mayor's decision to select and place members on the commission.
Yes, yes. And if I could, another Sister Chair, if we could lay a deadline for us to have these, these people, these tasks done and having that process going. I mean, it may be too crazy to say, but before next meeting, but I think that I know that it is the mayor's decision and all that. The thing is that I think we should still put forth a list that we have all agreed upon that have went through the application process to put forth before, before we're saying, hey, Mayor Lucas, can you make a decision on this ASAP, but not provide anyone? We provide our people and then say that, And so then there's a pool, there's people that we know are, you know, have been tested, I guess, I don't know, but tried and true through the process.
Just to be clear, are we suggesting, are we sending individual applications for review, or are we coming up internally with a list to then send the application to?
Well, personally, I see that we have a major need of commissioners within this work to do this. So if any of us already have people like, you know, brother, you mentioned a few people in the last few meetings. And so, boom, you know, I know that Sister Barnes has, yes, I say that we send out this invitation to these people that we know. We also ask the commissioners that are resigned of people that they know that have interest, and we send them this application along with that addition that Dr. Tawhid said, and we have all that in place. And before we're sending to the mayor, hey, can you make a decision ASAP? We send, can you make a decision ASAP? And these are the people that we have tried and true and think would help us continue this work.
Yeah, so if everybody is in agreement, I can send the link out, which is the application that the coalition used to solicit interest in the commission. And I think everything that you said is correct. We would solicit interest from folks we know. We'd find out if there are people in the community that are interested. It feels like we probably need to create maybe a 3-member group that can look at those versus all of us trying to look at those. Because I agree, I think we decide who we'd like to send forward to the mayor for his consideration. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be on that review committee? Because
I
I
would be
agree
a
with
part
Will
of that.
Bowles. I would hope that we could say 2 to 3 weeks, we have the list. And we put that forward and then give him another 2 to 3 weeks to review it and make appointments.
Does that mean we will spend our July meeting reviewing and approving that list?
Well, I'm suggesting that we get 3 or
Between
4
it.
of us outside of the commission. I mean,
Right.
on the commission, but outside of this meeting, and be responsible for collecting those interest applications and reviewing them
Right.
and discussing amongst yourselves who the candidates might be.
I think I will push to at least run those names by the full commission to
Okay.
get a vote on it first
Okay.
before.
Which would be in closed session, right?
True.
Okay. Does that sound fair that at our next meeting, the goal will be to have collected those names, that we go into closed sessions and have discussion and decide who we would want to forward to the mayor for consideration?
And our
Sounds good.
deadline then will be the next
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
We would make sure to make the nominations by July.
Okay.
And if you said we would like to have the retreat by August, right?
Really?
So we'd have to give him 30 days to try to get it done.
I find that comment
So-
that Janae just put in the chat about was there an existing list of the original that was of the original commissioners that may still be in existence that we could pick from.
Thank you. Justice, I see your comment. Thank you. And we'll get with Mickey Dean or Janae Relaford if you can provide that original list. I don't know who would have that original list,
I don't know.
to see if they were still interested.
Commissioner Hartsfield has her hand up.
Commissioner Hartsfield?
Yes, I'm seeking clarity with regards to these individuals or these candidates that the full commission is going to review. Did I hear something about there's an application or something that is going to be completed? Will that information be forwarded to us prior to the meeting, next meeting? Because it seems like that would be a lot to do to review and discuss and make decisions in the next meeting.
Thank you for that question. So yes, I have the link to the Google Doc, which is the application, and I'll send that out to all of you. I think the question is, are we planning to review all of those that would be a lot to review.
Mhm.
I think that's what the committee is for that we just formed.
So the separate committee.
Mm-hmm.
So the separate committee would do all the review. And then
And
the separate committee would bring the names that you select back to the commission monthly meeting for consideration.
I think so.
So we'd see the entire list of 20, but you may recommend 8.
So
I'm
that's
asking,
even know
and
if
I'm
we-
asking the
I don't even
question.
know if we would see the full list of 20. I think we would just see the 8 that they put forth,
Okay,
and then we will vote on the 8.
gotcha. What was that? Was that Commissioner Bowles?
yeah, I mean that's fine if that's the way. I'm cool with that too.
But just
But
for, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just clarifying what Commissioner Ellis said. So he's saying that the group of 3 would review all of the applicants, and then they would pull out, and I'm making this up, they pull out the 7 that we want to look at in the meeting in July, the full commission, to get approval from the full commission to move those 7 names to the mayor. But there would be a
Okay.
smaller group that
And
would
so,
evaluate all of the applications.
and so that's where I have just the minor contention, right? Because I've heard talk of, and I'm not going to go off track, but I've heard talk of the retreat where we'll come together ourselves and talk. I definitely think that that should happen, you know, as well, with those people that could make it onto a Zoom after this 3, you know, yes, 3 people can review this, but I do think that everyone should at least see the full list of names before the July meeting.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
if
and that would be,
yeah, if
what's
you
that?
want to, if you're not on the committee, but you do or still want to see the full list of names, I think that's fully up to you to review as much as you want to review. But
Indeed.
like I don't want to be. I'm gonna speak for myself. I don't want to be held responsible for reviewing all of them and making a decision about and making it to bring forth to the committee. But I may want to be nosy to see who all submitted an application. You know what I mean?
There you
So
go. There,
I think that
there you go.
y'all have access to the full list, but there's a small. I think that I heard you volunteer to lead up that effort. Is that right, Commissioner Bowles?
That is a fact.
Yeah, to review all those applications and then decide which ones you and I think two other strapping gentlemen or ladies can join in on that cause as well.
Definitely. And we'll be making sure to, as we get that list together, to shoot out to everyone 3 to 4 weeks right before the meeting to, you know, if whoever wants to join in.
Right. So that way we don't
Yeah.
have to sit in the meeting and read the applications too, right? We know who the hypothetical 7 or 8 are.
Yeah.
And we can be ready to vote
Yeah.
on them.
Indeed.
Commissioner Hartsfield, was your question answered?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Was your question answered about the process?
Sort of, kind of. I would offer or like to sit on the committee that would review the applications and I guess vet them for recommendation to the full commission.
All right.
Can I can I raise maybe 2 questions? Since the original list was compiled by the coalition, now that responsibility I think has rightly gone now to the commission, sitting commissioners. But could we ask for a member of the coalition to be on that committee as well? That may be Will, but but serving double duty so that we get some continuity in the process of selection of names. 1, and 2, how many recommendations are we asking this committee to put forward to the commission?
Let me just jump in, brother, since I was mentioned, and I will say that I will not be serving as that. But since it was brought up, I definitely recommend Sister Janae, or you know. But I mean, I do think that is pinnacle because that original list did come that way,
Sure.
and so even utilizing that. But then on to your second question.
Yeah, the second question is how many persons are we asking the committee to put forward?
Whoever completes the application.
Okay.
No, I think that I think we should have a number. I think you said the number 7, you said the number 8.
We need 3 people and we are doing the initial review and making recommendation. I don't think we send the mayor more than
10,
9.
yeah, 10, I
Total.
think top.
I agree with that. I picked up the wrong message. I was thinking of the initial. I thought he was talking about the initial, so yeah. But that's,
And I
yeah,
hope-
I
I hope
completely
that we
agree.
have-
8 to 10.
I hope that we have that many people willing and interested
I think we
in
do.
participating, because again, we've been looking for somebody to replace Ryan since January, and I think I've only had 2 or 3 people. So I don't know how many people are out there that have the skill set that we're looking for, the time and the commitment to do this work.
Put it on Facebook. I'm sorry.
Put it on Facebook. Okay.
Can I clarify? So is there a open application process?
No.
So, because we were discussing there's an application. So these applications were those that were already collected by the coalition?
Yeah, so let me clarify. So back before the commission was seated, the coalition had a process for vetting persons that they were going to recommend the mayor place. They had an application process. The mayor did not. So for anybody that was placed by the mayor, they probably didn't go through a process. They were just appointed. But many of us, including myself, there was an application process. We all went through the coalition. And I knew that, so I just thought that was very helpful, which is why I brought it up to be the way that we do it as far as how we make our recommendations.
So how, if we have someone that may be interested, how do we get them the application?
I'm going to send it out to everybody.
Okay.
I'll just send it out to you. Because the other thing that we have to understand, the mayor can pick anybody he wants. He doesn't have to take our recommended process.
Mhm.
But we at least will have that opportunity to send those names to him. He could totally go pick somebody that's not part of our vetted list, because it's his sole decision.
I think we also uncovered another portion of logistics here, that it is not an open application. This is an application that commissioners will be actively inviting folks to apply for.
That's a really good point. Invited, you'll be invited to apply versus folks just being able to
To click a
apply.
button, right?
Any other discussion on that? All right, I think that will do it for me. Budget priorities, commissioner replacement, listening sessions for 2024. If you all, the subcommittee leads, would start having those conversations. And then finally, I would like to have guest presenters. We've talked about that before during these meetings. If you have folks in the community, folks that you met in the community, I am now very interested in hearing from somebody from Decarcerate KC, because I'm not familiar with that group. But if there are organizations and groups that are doing this work that could help educate us on any of these topics, please send those names forward so that we can plug them into our calendar and hear from them and get to hear their work and how they can contribute to the work that we're doing.
And how would they be structured in these meetings?
What do you mean?
So, how much time would they have? How much time would they have? Would you expect them to come and present up here? Would they have audio visual capabilities? Kind of like what?
I think it would
What would it look
depend. I mean,
like?
I think I would like to say we could give them up to an hour
Okay.
of presentation time and Q&A time. I don't know that every person would need
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
but certainly I think we could give people that time, and we could have the PowerPoints connected. They could be in person or on Zoom.
Okay.
I just think it's important for us to continue making sure that we are making ourselves available to experts out in the community, and getting familiar with them.
Yeah. Should we, 'cause I know for the individual subcommittee meetings, I've been looking for education experts. Should we think about people that are more broadly expert and have like a more broad expertise, since this room will include all of the different subcommittees?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I like the laser focus. I mean, when I think about education, somebody to come that knows that topic, that can drill down on that topic, because I think it's important that we all know a bit about all of our areas, even if it's not our harm area.
Okay.
Quite frankly, you guys have had people in your subcommittee meetings that I think we needed as full commissioners to hear. and maybe they would be willing to come back and do that. All right, next up is subcommittee reports. Commissioner Tauheed, Economics.
Yes, we did not meet on the scheduled time for the Economic Subcommittee this month for two reasons. One, we had Commissioner Reesmeyer and then Commissioner King, who resigned. So we really did, well, we had a committee. It would have been myself and Commissioner Bowles. But both Commissioner Bowles and myself went to a retreat in Tulsa, Oklahoma during that week. And so we canceled that meeting. So let me give you a bit of a report on the Tulsa reparations retreat. It was sponsored by First Repair, the Evanston Group. We had persons from all over the country. We had a group from Atlanta, a group from California in general, group from, of course, Oklahoma, Wichita, Kansas City, Chicago, and Evanston. And so we had membership from all over the country reporting in on what they were doing in their cities. As mentioned before, we did have a very brief discussion about the lawsuit that was brought against the Evanston Reparations Project. I think we've talked about it as much as we probably should talk about it now, and as much as any of the Evanston persons were able to talk about it at the time. We did have some discussion about strategy going forward that we can talk about in the in closed session later on today. The projects going on, everyone should know, or maybe is aware that Chicago, the mayor just commissioned a reparations commission in Chicago, fully budgeted, fully funded at the time to do the reparations work, reparations research work in Chicago. There's a reparations ordinance, or at least a proposal for an ordinance that was put forward by a community member in Wichita, Kansas, former Kansas City resident, in fact, who had moved to Wichita, who put forward a reparations ordinance in Wichita that's going through their process. Other cities, Atlanta and the West Coast persons who were, I forget exactly which cities they were. There were a couple of different places on the West Coast where there are not as far advanced in this process. But it was I guess the highlight, or maybe the low light in the retreat was the tour of Greenwood District in Tulsa, commonly known as Black Wall Street. We had a tour guide who Chief Amunsa, who has just written a book, a great historian, written a book challenging some of the popular narrative in Black Wall Street, what people have come to know or think about. He made two comments that stood out to me. One was he didn't like the name Black Wall Street because, for two reasons. One, it gives an indication that there was just a street in Tulsa, Greenwood Boulevard or Greenwood Avenue, but it was more than a street. It was an entire district, 8 square mile district that was destroyed. There were thousands of persons whose lives were taken and who could not be found after that. It wasn't just a few persons. There were, of course, many persons unknown, whether they died in the massacre or whether they just left and never came back. But there were a number of mass graves and places that it was known that persons were murdered in that process. So that was one reason. Greenwood, Black Wall Street is more than just a street; it's a district. But he also said that he objected to the idea of Black Wall Street because that idea, that name, would give the impression that the wealth that was built in Greenwood was as a result of some kind of Wall Street investment process, that it was regular kind of, American capitalist finance that built that wealth. And he said, no, that's not how the wealth was built. That wealth was built on a cooperative economic framework. He gave an example that it was very customary for persons who were, one that needed help building house to have their neighbors help them build their houses. And so wealth was built in a cooperative manner. It wasn't a competitive Wall Street type of manner. And I think that's important. He also mentioned that it wasn't just Tulsa that was benefiting in this, that was linked into this process, that there were over 50 cities in Oklahoma that were linked together in this cooperative economic process. Greenwood, the Greenwood district in Tulsa was the largest, but it was the center, if you will, the hub of a very thriving Oklahoma community. Much of the wealth in Oklahoma, maybe the impetus for the wealth in Oklahoma was built because at the time Oklahoma was the rich state in terms of its oil production. It had oil, and private citizens had oil on their land. That spurred the wealth of the institution, the accumulation of wealth in Oklahoma. All of that was destroyed in the 1921 massacre. So that was, if you get a chance, if you've never been to Oklahoma, my first chance to time being there. If you ever get a chance to do that, then make sure you take that tour. It certainly addresses the economic, some of the economic issues in many places, not as drastic, but certainly as important. But it also means that a total community was destroyed, which means the health system, the education system, the housing system, and other issues, other systems that was destroyed. It wasn't just a matter of economic destruction. So that's my report. I know Will was there as well, and he may have some other things to add.
Dr. Tawheed, I mean, you about took the cake right there. I don't know. I got like a little 16th slice here, but don't worry. I got a little bit. So
Yes, please.
Yes, Miss Dean, of all things. How ironic, right? The woman that's leading the charge in Wichita to bring reparations about, originally from KC, but Miss Dean, like I said, ironic on so many levels. But spirit, I mean, it's wild, the similarities actually. But regardless, she was there and she spoke strong about how the things of what's happening in Wichita, Nicodemus and the per se Black Wall Street that was there, as we know, Nicodemus right there close to Wichita. It's one of the Black staples that we've had here in Kansas, or there in Kansas. But on that note, I want to, and I'm glad that you had mentioned her, because she sent us a letter that they actually are presenting to their city council. And it's a letter in support of the reparations, and for their city to put forth a reparations ordinance or task force. And they have drafted a letter that they've sent out nationwide. And so it's been sent to us, and they're asking that we sign the letter to to say that our organization, this commission, agrees that they should have these reparations, and as they go to present these to their mayor, which they've had multiple meetings with and such, that will help with their situation. So as I say that, I'm jotting a note so that I'll send that letter to you, Sister Chair, so that it could be sent. But like I said, this is a letter that is in support for Wichita reparations, and it's something that is wanting signed. Of course, that's something that we have to agree on as a commission to sign. But I definitely know that with what they've got going on, the hurdles that they're trying to, subvert now, that we go ahead and we sign that letter and show them our support as well. Sorry, it's drafted out by our legal representative. It's actually really nice, but I'll send that right after this meeting. Next thing about that was, yes, that retreat, which, you know, when brother Ellis said retreat, man, my heart freaking jumped, because that is what we need. Because there's, yes, the education piece, there's the, you know, all these other pieces, right? We know, but what they hit and have maintained year after year is that to not forget the spiritual healing that's needed. And so that's what was one of my biggest takeaways, is that, you know, as we live this life here, right, you're just going along before you're conscious. And we're going along this world, and you put all the history on the back burner. And being it put on the back burner, we go through life, but we end up having these traumas that are ingrained genetically because we haven't dealt with it. Lo and behold, it has to be dealt with. And as you come to do this research, as you come to do these studies, and you actually are put forth with reading, this is exactly what happened. Oh, they've got pictures. Oh, guess what? They're still utilizing, you know, the genealogy till now. These things end up sticking with us, not just spiritually, but mentally as well. And those things have to be addressed, and they can't be put on the back burner. And so the part of reparations and local reparations building, just as much as now we get into the research, we see there's all these other cities that have laid out so much information on this, right? Not until we jump into the pool, we see this vast amount of information's already there. The same case is the situation for this spiritual and this mental healing outside of the status quo. And so as we get into these teachings, and we get into these studies, we have to have a means that breaks us spiritually and mentally to recognize the next plane. And so I would just say that as we plan to do our retreat, which I'm 1,000% behind, that we also maintain to put an element that captures the same thing like that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's literally internal repair. That's, you know, reparations, we get all these things, but we need that internal repair. And so we can't forget the spiritual, the mental, and, you know, all these different aspects. So.
Thank you. Any questions for the economics report from Commissioner Tauheed or Commissioner Bowles? Thank you for representing and bringing that information back.
Can I say that Sister Janae was also there, and if we could give her some time to give her observations as well.
Indeed.
Sister Janae, did you want to do that at your when it's time for your report?
I can wait until then. But yeah, as Brother Will said, Dr. Tauheed pretty much shared everything. I want his report for my report to commit to the coalition. But yes, I will share when it comes to me.
Okay. All right. All right. Cordell Ellis, education.
Yes, we were able to meet back on June 12th. Professor Tauheed, Dr. Tauheed, again, taking the cake and bringing the heat with the information around the African-centered education. So since 2024 began, the Education Subcommittee has been working to laser focus or specify their research centered around harms that occurred in the Kansas City area pertaining to African-centered education schools and African-centered pedagogy in the Kansas City Public School District, and its subsequent closing and the impact on students, communities, and success. And so Dr. Tauheed was able to come in and gave us a really great presentation, which I do believe will be uploaded in its entirety to our folder of resources. So it'll be available for everybody to review. But I agree with what your previous statement that, you know, these are some things that should be and could be used on a whole group platform. I just have a couple highlights here from my notes that I will bring to the forefront. They're in no way in any attempt to, again, try to recreate the type of information or the amount of data that we saw, because it was truly staggering to see the story, to hear and to see the story around how the African-centered schools came to be, what their purpose was, what their impact was, and even still having to come to grips with the result, right, and the subsequenting ending. And so, like I said, I have a few stars here in my notes that I'll bring to the forefront. And Dr. Tawhid, if there's things that you'd like to add at the end, I'm sure I'll only take a quarter or half of this cake here. So I think that the big piece, the first thing that I highlighted was that this was back in the early 90s, 1992, when magnet funding was in the Kansas City public schools. And if a school did not get magnet funding, they were able to then employ a theme onto their school building or employ some type of philosophical North Star. And the philosophical North Star and theme of African-centered education was that Black children learn just as well as other children. And I think that was the philosophy that started and set apart the African-centered education, right? And it wasn't all Black teachers. It wasn't something that was drastically different, but it was mindsets and beliefs that shift the way teachers interact with students, interact with families and communities. And as educators, now there's a lot of research that shows how a teacher's expectations and what a teacher believes a student can accomplish directly translate to what that student actually accomplishes. And so I remember having that conversation directly with Queen Mother Ballard, where she explicitly said, we had plenty of white teachers in the building that were equally as effective as our Black teachers because of the beliefs that they brought with them into the school building. Now, maybe that took a little bit of training, maybe that took a little bit of unlearning, maybe that took a little bit of reappropriated learning, but once they become effective teachers, they become effective lovers and believers of Black children. When you looked at some of the data that Professor Tahi brought forth to demonstrate the success of the J.S. Chick and Sanford Ladd schools, their growth, the elementary school growth across the board in terms of the content areas were unmatched in the state of Missouri or in the Kansas City area. There was actually the governor of Missouri at the time came and recognized Sanford Ladd as one of the fastest growing and most improved school around the state. And what was really impactful and interesting to hear was that the area of social studies was the area of highest achievement and growth. So when you looked at, across English, of course, there was double-digit exponential growth in English, double-digit exponential growth in math and science. When you looked at social studies, it was exponential, the amount of growth that we saw and sustained high achievement that we saw in social studies because of what Dr. Tahi eloquently positioned as like a double learning, where Black students not only are learning about history, but they're learning about themselves. So learning about their culture, they're learning the contributions that Black people made to society. So not only is it a math, is it a science, is it a STEM tactic, is it a literacy tactic? It's also an identity tactic. It is it's a culturally affirming tactic that provides the supplemental learning that Black students need in order to place themselves on the even playing field, right? To create the equity that's necessary to not only achieve in those other contents, but to feel like they're somebody. And that's what we see through not only the qualitative data, but the quantitative data as well through the social studies grades. Let's see. The only thing, again, I have the teacher's expectations and belief. The other I have here is this idea of and I would love for you to speak to this a little bit, Dr. Tawhid, if you could. This idea of charismatic leaders and systemizing charisma, right? Where the head of the school was often characterized as a great leader. Well, those Black kids over there do great because they have Queen Mother Ballard, and she is a phenomenal educator. She can create pockets of excellence. How do we systemize pockets of excellence so that all schools can be able to achieve in this way? What I have starred around the closing and the eventual ending of this program was that the expansion of African-centered schools is threatening. And I had a really candid conversation with people in my own family recently that are alive and educators at this time that are Black, that live in the community, that still aren't sure about, well, was there mismanaging of money? Was there some type of mishandling of communication that went on? Was there some type of internal issues that went on? But what I think we can come to a conclusion of is that it was working for Black students, and the fact that it's not here anymore has an impact, a resonating impact on communities, not only on academic achievement, but you can then extrapolate how academic achievement impacts quality of life, which then is a direct causation to what we're looking at in our Black communities today. So I'm going to stop there. I would love for Dr. Tawhid to chime in on any pieces that may have been incorrect or that I may have misspoken or misunderstood, or anything that you'd like to add.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's one thing that I'd like to comment on, because this is something you raised about talking to family members and other persons in the community about what they remember about African-centeredness, the process. And I didn't know this. I hadn't done any survey or talking to people in that way. It's interesting that after all of these years, more than 12 years, there are persons who still believe the narrative that was in the newspaper, that was in the Kansas City Star, as the narrative that that frames the African-centered process. It's also interesting that the Kansas City Star some time ago apologized for having done harm to the African-American community through various methods. Make a long story short, this is an example of harm. And this is an example of harm, how harm continues. That it's not just the fact that a successful school, nationally and internationally recognized school, was harmed because of lies, but those lies persist. They persist in the psychology and of members of this community who didn't know anything other than what they were reading in the mainstream and in the Kansas City Star and the mainstream newspaper, the corporate media. And so if we need an example of how harm continues, even after the initial damage is done, this is certainly one example. Without going any further in this, because there are a lot of things that we could cover, and I'd be happy to do an hour presentation for this committee, because it addresses a couple of other things. There's some things to be understood, to be re-educated in with regard to African-centered education. That is, I've got 4 things that I've written down. 1, the difference between expectations, which are important, and aspirations. Those are 2 different things. The difference between centering, African-centered is about centering, versus grounding, which is a term that is used in many places and used interchangeably with centering. They mean different things. The difference between, the contest that exists between pedagogy and politics. Asa Hilliard, a well-known, internationally known educational psychologist, who was an advisor to our school here, he's now transitioned, made it clear that we don't have a pedagogy problem. We have a politics problem. We know how to educate our children. The politics of these systems stands in the way. And another thing that's important in the African-centered process is the difference between content and intent. That's the social studies example that Will mentioned, that Cornell mentioned. We teach content, the same content in a way that for social studies that's done in any Missouri school. We teach more, which is why our students do so much better than even the average student in the state of Missouri. That's content, but we do it with an intent of liberation, of management, of our students becoming the process of this common education, which intends to demoralize them and dehumanize them. The intent is very important. So let me say it there. I mean, I could go on for a long time here, but let me stop.
Hey, brother, Dr. Tawheed, if I can add, because you're right. I mean, this is a piece that really everyone should at least know about. But I just have a couple of things that touch to me where I have to freaking mention. And so one is that I heard that they're not existent, but one system still does exist. And so the thing is that it's under threat. It's under threat, and it's been under threat after years of high achievement. First, they thought it would fail, decades of high achievement. And then they want to combine the three schools that had a elementary, a middle, and then a high school. And they wanted to combine, after the city took over control, all of these schools into one, K through 12 in one building. Obviously, the African mindset, the leaders, like, this can never happen. And so it's been under threat from that very day. It is still under threat now because, I mean, besides our people not believing in them, but besides that, you have the financial aspect where the tax dollars and the financial system, how they secrete money to certain places and not to others. Is this, of course, if they had tried to shut down the buildings and combine all these kids, knowing that's a harmful atmosphere, now they're trying to hit it where, in the dollar, where, it affects. But then, and so the thing is that it still exists where, that liberation and that sound is still there. And so that's something that is a means of, if we have to educate our people that, hey, you have to, our parents have to be there and put their kids into there so that we, we're utilizing these systems. Because, I mean, literally, my first year there was crazy. I don't know if you've ever had, your first day of school and you take your kid to school and, they have a drumming procession that all the grades of the kids run through, as the drummers are going, and then the teachers, they yell. I mean, the spirit is on a whole nother magnitude. The thing is that it's under threat. And so that's where not only do we have to protect what is under threat, but we have to expand the original idea of which had created that. And so all that just to go on to say that, yeah, this is very important. We definitely have to hear about it. And so that's it.
Well, thank you all. That was good. And as a parent of a kid that graduated from African-centered schools under Mother Ballard, I 100% support the approach and would support the return of it in a heartbeat. My son was interviewed during the George Floyd case, and at that time he had been out of college, so he had finished college, and he referred back to his time at African-centered schools and how he was able to manage through all of that racist conversations and confrontations at school, whereas other people in school were just having meltdowns. They couldn't handle it. And he made the comment that he knew who he was and mentioned the African-centered schools and what he had learned. So I think it's foundational. I think it's fundamental. And that was years after he left. So once you got it, you got it. And right now, our kids are not getting it. All right, that was the education subcommittee. So we got to make up some time here. But thank you for that. So we got Commissioner Jones, Health.
So, our subcommittee actually didn't meet, so mine is short. So I don't have anything. We will, be back in meeting, in July.
Do you have an update? I know that we canceled our June 19th session. Do we have a reschedule?
No, we do not have a reschedule. I've been in contact with the speaker, so we need to identify a new date.
Okay. All right. And then, of course, we have criminal justice and housing that we don't have a report for today. So we will move right into old business and new business. Is there any old business? I just took a quick look at these meeting notes from last month, and there are several questions that are listed. I feel like some of these we answered. What is the number for a quorum? We're down to 10, so that would be 6. Is that right?
I think so. I know some of those questions, LaDonna and I have a meeting with the attorney on
Okay,
Thursday.
okay. All right. Any new business?
I saw an email from Commissioner Bowles. I don't know if this is the forum to have this conversation, but I would love to hear in person, I guess, as closest person this is, what that email was pertaining to, kind of how you saw it being relevant for our conversations, and maybe how you saw it being used.
Talking to me, Commissioner Ellis?
Yeah. Let me see if I
Okay,
can...
are you talking about the tort of deceit?
Yes, tort of
Okay,
deceit.
yes, indeed, because Baba Mickey had sent a letter talking about neck, street, neighborhood neck or something like that, but it's in Independence, and it was the neck neighborhood. I think it's actually the neck, but it was a place in Independence where their houses were demolished. The city had promised them it was going to be this and that, but it was a lie. And due to that lie, there's this law called the tort of deceit. And what it does is that it states that if a state or a municipality, local or state, obviously, or the state, lies to the people and it's on record as all theirs is, then it could be a means of direct legal compensation. And I said direct legal interaction because, as we know, like what we're going through, reparations through the city, is different than being straight direct, right? Versus a suit that could be held from the families of that independence, those 15,000 residents that were displaced, they actually would have a suit based upon that tort of deceit. And I mean, the statute of limitations is like 6 years based upon when it happened or when you have proof of the knowledge of it happening. And so that still, is research to be done until they have that finalized. Then it's something that they still have that statute of limitations on. But that's all that was about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions on that, then.
I just want clarity. Commissioner Bowles, was that part of the Toriano Porter story? Did that come out of the?
I'm not sure actually if it was Toriano. I'm not sure the story, but it was a story that was released by the Kansas City Star that Baba Mickey sent. So I'm not sure they reported all that, but yes.
All right. Any other questions? Any other new business? All right, Justice Gatson, Real Justice Network report. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
I got my head wrap on because I'm still celebrating Juneteenth.
That's right, every day.
But what I've been telling everybody is we have to turn that celebration into organization for reparations. So that's the mandate right now. And that's what I've been telling everybody we have to do. So since we last saw each other, I did a reparations bus tour with Eric
Yes.
on Juneteenth. And so we were able to meet down at my family's church and load up a bus and, teach people about the history of Kansas City and how that relates to reparations. It was really beautiful, and we plan to do more of those because we think that's a good way for people to really understand the harm, so they can then understand just how much we're owed. And so that's what's going on. Last we talked, I was mentioning that we were going to do a panel. We have pulled the panel back because we want to slow it down and take our time to make sure that we do an excellent job on that. And we didn't quite have the folks that we wanted available on the date. So we are reworking that, and we definitely would love to have 2 commissioners from the health committee to join that. I sent something, and I realized, Terry, that I have 2 email addresses for you, so I hope I sent it to the right one. But I did send something. I will follow up with that. And as you all have heard, I'm tossing my hat in to join the commission. I'm really passionate about the work, and I'm showing up. I'm here at the meetings, and I want to see a wonderful package passed in Kansas City. I'll also note that I think you all know, before the coalition started way back, I had already been working on some national reparations work on a national, and so that work still continues. The movement for Black Lives is really beefing up the reparations platform and bringing in folks from all around the country. I think you all know that my organization is a part of that larger organization that consists of about 200 Black organizations across the country. And so I've definitely have my fill of reparations work on the national level, but I would love to represent us on the commission as well. I'll leave it at that. I know there's a process, and I'm willing to go through it. If there are any questions, can't forget the young people. So the youth group, they are finalizing their work. I think I told y'all their narrative work has a concentration on local reparations. You folks have been mentioning Decarcerate. Our organization works with Decarcerate. I know them personally, can definitely reach out and make some connections there. But there are other groups that the young folks are working with to create a narrative, their own, around how they visualize reparations, local reparations. And so that's what Real Justice Network has been up to. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Commissioner Gatson. I do have a question. What's the name of the organization? You said that your organization was a member of a 200-member organization in reparations?
Yes, it's called the Movement for Black Lives.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And don't confuse it with Black Lives Matter, because many people do. So they are 2 separate organizations, but it's the Movement for Black Lives. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and we have a strong reparations platform. You can please, if you don't know, Google, look up Movement for Black Lives and go through, look at the reparations platform. It's laid out beautifully. But yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Justice? Thank you for that report. I cannot see that. I'm gonna go on to Janae Relaford for her report, and then we'll come back to the chat comment. KC Reparations Coalition report.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just start with, yes, I'll start with our meeting last night. So KC Reparations Coalition had our monthly public meeting, and we centered it on internal reparations. And we actually looked for a professional speaker to give us some guidance on Black mental health. But our person that we reached out to ended up backing out or canceling the week before. And I actually had reached out to Cecil Watry to stand in, but didn't hear back from him. But going forward, we definitely want to connect with people in the mental health space for Black African Americans for a follow-up from this meeting that we had last night, because it was good, it was needed, but we absolutely need more. So we just gave individuals the opportunity to say what they thought internal reparations meant to them. And then we talked about some definitions, share some definitions of what emotional reparations was from some articles Baba Mickey shared. Then we kind of just let people talk about their own harms, solutions, resources. But we didn't get a lot into solutions and resources. Actually, I feel like this meeting went faster than any of the ones that we've had because we allowed people to kind of vent, which I think is necessary for healing, but we just need a professional to guide us through that process. So I'm lifting that up to you all as a request. I'm actually going to be sending out a follow-up email asking the participants from last night, what would they like to go from here? Like, what would they like to see next? Or what do they need going forward for healing? Because we would like to do everything that we can to provide that. And so that was our meeting last night. And then I'll just give my little a summary of my experience with the retreat in Tulsa. It was absolutely beautiful, always gathering with others from across the country to talk about reparations. But it was also very traumatizing for me. We watched a documentary of the litigations in Tulsa, and just the fact of watching those survivors, and I just can't wrap my brain around them being denied, and just all the evidence, that tour that we went on, and just the impact of that, and to know that we're still being denied, and the sentiment from that retreat from a lot of the leaders, Robin and the attorney that's been working with those families over 20 years, was this is a marathon, and we still have a long road, which honestly is just hard for me, knowing that we've been at this for hundreds of years. So I am not interested in passing this work down to my children, my children's children. So I'm very adamant that reparations is for now and not for another generation. But I think one of the most poignant things I took away was the session on health healing and self-care. And I hope I don't pronounce the doctor's name wrong. Maybe you can help Dr. Tahi. It's Dr. Akmal Mawakil. Did I say it right?
That's it, sister.
Yes, I took so many notes that I'm going to share my notes out that I took from suggestions he gave, just about, we did different meditative practices, stretches, and he told us different things about, of course, our diets and different things to do with that, that to me is very helpful, because our health is our wealth. And if we are not paying attention to our physical and our mental health, we're not going to be equipped to keep this fight up. So that's what I wanted to share about the retreat. And then, so for Juneteenth, I was doing a presentation on reparations with the Waldo Business Association. And that went really well. They were very impressed with the PowerPoint that we put forth that, you know, if you all know of groups that would be interested in having a presentation on reparations, that's what we're here for. But they all felt that they learned so much that they didn't understand about our fight for reparations. So, and this was mostly Caucasian individuals. So I think the more that we can actually talk in front of those who are in opposition, maybe in opposition to reparations, that would be great. So then I'm gonna move to KC Clergy for Reparations. So Reverend Dr. Howard with SCLC is heading up that initiative, and we're actually meeting with him this Thursday to get a follow-up from him on that Urban Summit meeting that was held. So we're looking forward to that. And then you all, the commissioners should be aware of Liberation Ventures Research Consortium. I know a couple of the commissioners will be joining coalition members for a meeting that we have with them this Thursday. And the last thing I wanted to share was something that we're working on is some literature to get out to the community to deal with anti-reparations rhetoric. So I've ran across a lot of articles and videos of, you know, not just people from the Caucasian community, but African Americans who, you know, are against reparations. And I believe that anybody who's against reparations, either they are uneducated or they have a heart issue. It's one or the other. And so I would like to have a document that I can just easily share out, something that could be on our social media website, and then that could be a response, a reply, a rebuttal to, you know, these articles and comments that I see, you know, in the media against reparations. So actually held a meeting about a month ago with some of the coalition members, and we kind of went over an article that I found, and we came up with some rebuttals. So I'm going to be organizing those rebuttals and sharing them with you all so that you can, you know, maybe add to the list, and we can come up with a really good document that is shareable to the entire community. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you, Janae. I did have a question. I have to figure out where it is because I jotted it down. This is a good report.
One question. What's the name of the Liberation group you mentioned?
Liberation Ventures. So that is a entity in the reparations movement. It's a funding. They're a funding entity. So they funded KC Reparations Coalition, and they have this research consortium. So this Thursday would actually be our second meeting. It's their third meeting, but the first meeting that they had, we weren't funded when they had that meeting. So it's basically just to pull us together, all of who's interested in research in the reparations movement. I know Dr. Tahi was on there, and I think it's Sister Dion was the other. I can't remember who all was on the call with us last time, but it's just to help us with the research for this movement, pull us all together so everybody knows what everybody else knows.
All right, thank you.
Sister Janae, I know what my question was. How long is your presentation, your community presentation, when you take it out to educate groups?
So of course I can fit it to whatever time a person may give. But I would say doing the whole presentation thoroughly, at least 45 minutes to an hour. But the presentation that I did with the Waldo Business Association, they gave me 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I did a great job in 20 minutes, but I could have kept going.
I asked that question because when you said it, the very first thing that I thought about was when you meet with Reverend Howard, I think a fantastic opportunity would be to get in the pulpit of African American churches and do that presentation.
Right,
We
that's
do.
on our list.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
PowerPoint, that PowerPoint that we put together for the KC clergy, that's one of the asks.
Okay.
So there are simple asks like attend our meetings, share the link to our meetings, invite us to your put the meetings on your announcement, invite us to do a presentation, help us raise funds. Like it's a whole list of things. And Terry, if you don't have a copy of that PowerPoint, I can share it with you.
Yeah, send it to me because again, I think before you get to all of that other stuff, and this is a throwback from the conversation we had about African Center Schools and how our community was not necessarily on board. We don't want to find ourselves in the same place with reparations, and we know that just as many Black people don't know and understand reparations as other people. And so while we're out educating, there's this assumption that we're all on board. And I think that would be a mistake to not take time to educate our own community in those ways and give them as much time as we give other communities. And we may have to think about a strategy to do that because it's such a big ask. But I do think that part of the African Center Schools issue back then is that the larger community had no idea what if your kid didn't go to African Center Schools, the larger community really had no idea what it was. And it was really easy to confuse them and get them thinking about race or other issues. So I just think it's really important that we, as part of our strategy, as part of our communications strategy,
Right.
that we make sure that we're not missing opportunities to educate our own community.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And not just the churches, youth groups. Like we need to be before young people as well.
Right.
So
Yeah,
any referrals, recommendations you all have, connections that you can help us make would be great.
I think it just goes back this conversation about a strategy. Instead of us just being out there talking to folks, we take some time, however we take some time and think about a strategy of, how do we get out? Of course, churches are easy because they have every Sunday, they've got somebody who can continue to send that message. You've got a captive audience. And I think we just think about, when you say young people, I think about high aspirations. I think about urban rangers. Who are those groups that we know are a captured audience that have leadership in place that meet regularly versus us just kind of going out there because it's only, X number of us. And I just think we have to think about the best way to make that approach.
I'm also,
Amen.
go ahead, Janae.
I just said amen.
Oh, okay. I'm also hearing that's what Heather's here for,
That is
right?
what Heather's here.
So how much overlap is there with what the coalition is working on in terms of marketing and communications and documents and what we have? And how is there overlap or using some of the same materials or?
I think that's a really good question because I do think there's a difference. And when I talk about education and awareness, I think it's different than the level that the coalitions group would go. As a commission, I don't see us necessarily leading with that because that's really not what we've been asked to do.
Leading with what? I'm sorry.
Educating.
Okay.
We're leading with
our research.
and then listening to
Got
what
it.
the community would like to see.
Which is difficult because if the community isn't educated effectively, then we aren't hearing really great feedback.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think the commission's charge leads with education. I'm not saying we don't educate.
I hear you. Yeah.
I just don't know that leading with education is what the ordinance.
And I
laid
also
out.
heard you say, and I don't mean to be a pain in the butt. I also heard you say at the beginning of this meeting too, that you want to have a one-pager, right? Where you can easily rebuttal something quick, clean, and pretty that we can lay out, bullet point the issues. So again, I'm hearing the same thing. I just want to make sure that we're being efficient with our resources.
Yeah.
A communication strategy is no light undertaking. And I'm hearing lots of different audiences and we've always talked about mediums, but now we're having a really in-depth conversations about audiences and messaging. I think requires much more than the 4 minutes we have left.
And again, we can discuss it, but I think that is coalition. That difficult, hard, all the different audiences, all the different ways we communicate is coalition. Not to say we don't have a role, because we do, but I don't think our role is that. And we can continue to have conversations about it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree. I think that's something that when we have our retreat, I think it would be important to have a discussion about what our role is as far as education and communication and how we communicate to the public versus the coalition. Because I agree, I do see the coalition as having the role of providing that more in-depth education of the public, where we would provide education, one, of why the commission was founded. I think that document is excellent, that provides some statistics and data of why this is needed. Those are the types of things that I think we could utilize in the public to describe, okay, these are the known data of what's going on in Kansas City, of why this commission is needed, and then being able to communicate about what the commission is doing. And then once we have information of what we've found, to the community. So educating them on that way of, these are the data of what we found and where the harms are, and this is what backs up the recommendations that we're making. But as far as that really in depth of, all of the history and how this weaves throughout the entire nation, and I think that in depth type of education should come from the coalition.
Well, I would advise us not to oppose research and education. It should be the case that if we do our jobs, the commission, we will end up with much more knowledge than the coalition has about what has happened in Kansas City. If that's not the case, there's no need for a commission.
Yeah, I'm not opposing
Well,
education.
no,
I'm not opposing education, or definitely not research. I just think the types of education that we will provide will be different from the coalition, and it will likely overlap. But I also think that we could easily, as a commission, get very, very bogged down in trying to provide education all across the city, when our task is to conduct research and develop a report and develop recommendations. And I don't want us to get kind of away from that goal.
if I can finish, that's not what I was saying you were saying. That's not the way I understood what you were saying. What I was saying was, if we go through our process of research, we will have a body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge becomes our responsibility to educate the public about. But we don't have that knowledge now. The coalition doesn't have that knowledge now. They can't educate the public on that. So they can educate the public on what they know. Unless we are intending to do research and then lock it up, put it in a file cabinet, and make no one aware of it other than the city council. That report is a process of education itself. It should be. It should be written so that the community understands what we're doing, so that it generates support in a political process, because it has to go through city council members, and city council members are going to be motivated by what their constituents believe, and their constituents need to believe that we have uncovered knowledge about reparations. That's all I'm saying. Let's not oppose these. This is a means ends. Education, research are a continuum. They're not opposed to each other.
I think what we just experienced was why we need to have a retreat, because I do think
Yes,
that
I
there
agree.
are lots of different approaches and strategies that would be helpful. And so I appreciate everybody's time. I apologize for not managing our time better, because it's 5 o'clock and we have not heard public input. Is there anybody on the call that has public
Yeah,
comment?
there's one person who just says iPhone. And I'll let them speak if that's okay.
If they,
Okay, you're unmuted.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. This is my first time tuning in to a local Kansas City. And I was just listening and I was jumping up and down when I think it's Liberation venue was talking about they went to Waldo and gave this presentation. And I understand completely, but the community is not fully aware of reparations. I've been in the community trying to get things organized. I'm just a regular citizen that is tired of a lot of talk and ready to do some footwork. I have been traveling outside of Kansas City to find out how to get large groups of people organized. I did one event here, so I got a little bit of a taste of some of these topics.
would
And
you mind introducing yourself and if
oh
you are
yeah, I'm
with an
sorry.
organization?
My name is Vaughn. I'm not with an organization.
Say your name again, and would you spell your last name, please?
Vaughn, and last name is Stone.
Bond, V as in Victor,
Vonnnie. So
and
it's
last
Bonnie.
name, please.
Stone, Stone.
Thank you. And are you associated with an organization?
I am not.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
So I'm a regular, I guess, citizen. I'm in the community. And I got tired of sitting and listening to people talk about things, discussing them, but never any bodies of people coming together and getting organized. So I've been traveling to try to figure out how other places that effectively organize, they do it. And just one thing that I've noticed here is that just by doing one event here, is there is a lot of gatekeeping. There is a lot of pitching to outside of the community, like to try to get them involved, but the community is left in the dark. So I was really happy when you said that maybe you need to refocus on the community and see where their stance or their understanding is before traveling outside of that to try to do a presentation to them. Because they're very aware of what reparations is. If you own a business, you know what it is. You've researched, you understand, you just don't agree. And basically that's a pitch to turn favor. But what I am seeing here is that there is a lack of organization. Not necessarily for one place, but just in the community. There is like, if you don't agree with one stance, people don't want to have anything to do with it. And we have to learn how to come together and disagree on multiple things, but still come together and try and organize. And we should be encouraging that. So even if they're not for certain things, they should still just try to come together and organize. If nothing else, just the network. Because I should know who's on reparations, who is looking at other things. I should know these people in case I run into other people and I can send them in that direction. So
Well,
I don't
you.
know if that.
Oh, go ahead.
That just seems like how they're organizing in other larger cities.
Well, first
and
of
I
all,
don't really see that being done here.
Well, first of all, thank you for attending our monthly meeting. We do meet on a monthly basis, and all of our subcommittees meet on a monthly basis, and all of our meetings are open to the public. So thank you for your interest, and thank you for exploring the work that we're doing on the Reparations Commission. And we welcome you to stay engaged and follow us because we are getting ready to move forward on quite a few different fronts. And the more that we can have engaged citizens, the better off we will be.
Yeah, and that would be great. I think there's a lot of people that don't even know that these forums take place, or they need
Yeah.
to be continually reminded. This was given to me by a coworker because we both work in the government, but she gave it to me. I didn't even know they had these or where to go to find them. So there's a lot of options that are out here for people that want to be active, they want to be involved, but they don't know where to go to get it. They don't know how to get involved. And then the energy is placed in spaces that are not conducive. So
Well,
that's just
ag-
my opinion.
Well, thank you again for exploring the Mayor's Commission on Reparations. We welcome you here. And like I said, if you go to the website, all of our meeting times are there. If you're interested in a particular harm area, all of our subcommittee meetings are there, as well as our monthly meetings. And we look forward to working with you on this topic.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and we have one more. And would you please introduce yourself, please, before you make your comment? And if you're associated with any organization or group.
Good afternoon. Can you
Good
hear
Good
me?
afternoon.
Awesome. My name is Latrice Tucker, Tucker. I've listened in on a few of the monthly meetings before. I met Janae probably a few months ago, so I've been in contact with her before. I wanted to say, I guess I'll have to go back onto the website and sign up for the subcommittee meetings again because I used to receive them, but I don't know if it stopped. I'll go back on there and double check. But I was listening about the application process, and I heard you talking about as far as being invited by a current commissioner. And I was texting back and forth with Janae while you guys were talking, but I don't think I have technically expertise in the fields that you guys are looking for per se, but I would definitely be willing to volunteer. She kind of gave me a summary of what you guys were needing as far as volunteers, but if you need my email or phone number, I'll definitely be open to helping out in any way I can, especially definitely with social media, because I volunteer with a lot of nonprofit organizations in the metro. I'm not necessarily associated with a specific or a certain organization. I just like helping people that are doing good things for the city. So that's what I do, and just wanted to put out there that I'm open to help out in any way I can, per se, or what I'm capable of doing or what you need.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And if you put your email address in the chat, we will be able to follow up.
The chat's disabled right now. I know
Oh,
Janae
okay.
has my information, so she
Okay. All
can
right.
forward it to you as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thank you for having us. I
Ah,
appreciate it.
Thank you. Are
And
there any other public comments?
Stacy Webb.
Yes, Stacy Webb.
Hi, Stacy Webb with the League of Women Voters Observer Corps. And I had two questions that are related. On the website page, is that Zoom link, is that good for the subcommittee meetings, attending those via Zoom?
It should be. That should be the link for any reparations meeting. It's the same link.
Okay, great. Good to know. And then my second question is on I think it was the education committee file where they're going to have a video of their last meeting. Is that open to the public or is that just within the committee?
Yes, I believe all the documents and recordings are public for public consumption.
The
And do
recordings,
you know how one?
Hold on, I'm sorry. We're gonna clarify that. 1 second. I
Okay.
may be mistaken.
Oh, okay. Okay.
the recordings are put on the web, the city's webpage for, I almost said YooHoo, YouTube. There's a channel there, and we haven't put any of the documents out.
Okay. So so sounds like YouTube has all of our meetings, the recordings, and then there will be, I do believe we are planning on creating a resource bank, a public resource bank with all of the documents, but that has yet to be created, but you can look for that
Okay,
to be
great. And so on that YouTube page, is there one specifically for the Reparations Commission?
I don't think so.
There's, yes.
Oh, it is?
What do they call those?
channels.
Yeah, there's a channel, like if you go to the city's website, there's a channel that is specifically just for the Reparations Commission. All
Okay.
other departments are gonna have one there as well, but there's one specifically just for reparations.
I did
And
not.
the
know
Perfect.
cities have to get
I
with it.
will try to find that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
All right, any other business before the commission at 5:12? All right, we are adjourned until next time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.